And thus, having sat down at a table in that famous Grand Café, or rather in the street in front of the Grand Café, we began to watch the passing people just strolling by, passing and strolling on the other half of the pavement of this Grand Café. Among the strolling crowd were beings of almost all the separate groupings, both of this continent Europe as well as of the other continents. Mostly, of course, from those communities whose turn it was at that period to be rich. There predominated, however, in that crowd, beings of the continent America. The beings of the continent America had already there in Paris finally taken the place in recent times of the beings of the great community Russia after the death of this latter. There strolled by there beings chiefly belonging to the caste of the ruling class, who often come there, as they say, to the capital of the world to have a good time. There were many businessmen also among them who had come there to Paris for what are called the fashion goods, chiefly for perfumery and women's clothes. Among the varied crowd walking on the Boulevard des Capucines, many young people could also be noticed who had come there to learn how to dance fashionable dances and make fashionable hats. As we, while talking, were examining that mixed crowd whose faces expressed their satisfaction at the fulfillment of a long-awaited dream, my new acquaintance, the young Persian, suddenly turned to me in surprise and, pointing his finger at a passing couple, exclaimed, "Look, look, there go genuine French people." I looked and saw that indeed this couple greatly resembled those beings whom I had seen in the provincial towns in that community France. After they had disappeared from sight in the crowd, we began to discuss in order to understand the reason why that genuine French couple came to be in this part of their capital. After various surmises, we unanimously agreed that that couple probably lived in some outlying part of genuine French Paris, and had gone for some family feast or other at their relatives to another part of this French Paris, which lay just on the opposite side. Evidently, at that family feast they had drunk rather excessively, and returning home after the feast, they did not want to make a detour and decided to take the direct route. And this direct route evidently passed just by the Grand Café. Probably for this reason alone did these genuine French people appear in this part of Paris. Talking, we continued to look at the strolling crowd decked out in the latest fashions. Although the majority of them were decked out in these latest fashions, yet from everything it was obvious that these clothes of theirs had only just been bought, today or yesterday. And from close observation and comparison of their faces with their clothes, one could without doubt be convinced that in the ordinary process of their existence at home, they rarely had the possibility of being so richly dressed and of feeling so free from care. When among these visiting foreign princes, as some of the natives called them, all sorts of also foreign professionals of both sexes, already well acclimatized to that part of Paris, were walking en masse, my new acquaintance, the young Persian, suggested to me that he would become my Paris cicerone, and that we should go to what are called the disreputable places of Paris and look at French depravity. I agreed, and we went from that Grand Café first of all to what is called a brothel situated nearby. There, in the first place, I learned that the owner of this noble establishment was a certain Spaniard. In the rooms of this house were a crowd of women, Poles, Viennese, and Italians, and even 2 negresses were there. I had wanted to see how genuine French women appeared in this setting, but from my inquiries it became clear that there was not even one French woman in this establishment. After this brothel, we again went on to the boulevards and began to walk and observe the strolling, varied crowd. And there also everywhere we met large numbers of the beings of the feminine sex, with the obvious signs on them of the aim of their nocturnal quests on these boulevards. All these women belonged to the already enumerated nationalities as well as to others, namely there were also Swedes, English, Russians, Spaniards, Moldavians, and so on there, but scarcely one genuine Frenchwoman. Soon some dubious-looking beings of the male sex began to accost us and propose to us that we do with them a certain Grand Duke. At first I did not understand what Grand Duke meant, but on various inquiries it became clear that these strange words had acquired there a definite meaning quite recently, namely from the time when the now dead monarchic Russia flourished there. It turned out that the beings there of that time, belonging to the caste of the ruling class of that dead Russia, were very fond of the capital of the world, and often went there, and almost every one of them, out of swank, gave himself out as a titled individual, such as Count, Baron, or Prince, but most frequently of all, as a Grand Duke. And since all of them obligatorily paid visits to dubious places of foreign Paris, the professional guides now call such a tour the Tournée du Grand Duc, which in English means the Grand Duke's Tour. Having taken one of these guides, we also went to see the nocturnal sights of that contemporary Corcolai. We visited various of these haunts. We were in the cafe of the homosexuals, and in the club of the lesbians, and in many of those evil hearths, where every abnormality proceeds, which are repeated from time to time in all the chief centers of culture of these unfortunates. Visiting these disreputable places, we eventually reached the streets of the famous, as it is called, Montmartre. Not strictly on Montmartre itself, but on the lower slope of the district of that name, which abounds in every kind of nocturnal, maleficent, disreputable establishment. Destined, however, not for the beings of that community France, but exclusively for the beings only who come there from other separately independent groupings, or as they themselves say, for foreigners. Besides many of these dubious establishments, there likewise exist there a great many night restaurants for foreign visitors also, which are open the whole night long. All this district in general only becomes animated at night. By day it is almost, as they express it there, dead, and of foreign visitors not one ever goes there. In all these restaurants there are what are called open stages, on which they show various amazing things, which proceed as it were among those beings similar to themselves who belong to other communities existing on other parts of the surface of their planet. They show that stomach dance of the African beings, the Caucasians with their dagger dances, and the